All right, hello everybody. I'm Mr. Plaza,
Mr. Vici?
and we're going to give you guys a brief tutorial here on how to bucket or categorize documents, as well as how to complete an outline for your DBQ. So we'd like you to use this video as a guide over the next few days as you get these two things done.
Okay, and as you'll see, Mr. Plaza is going to go through each document and show you guys how to put the buckets and categorize correctly.
Okay, so now that we've finished all 9 of our documents, we've analyzed them, we found quotes and things like that. Now we need to figure out what to do with them. It's great that we have all this information, but what are we going to do with it? Okay, we call this process bucketing or categorizing. So if you look at the back page of your packet, again, this is your DBQ packet. If you turn to the back page, it says Hook Exercise Part C, and again our question, why did the Industrial Revolution begin in England? Okay, right here you see a list of all 9 documents that we analyzed. And our job is going to be to put them together, categorize them in a way that's going to help us organize our argument. Okay, so down here, at the bottom of the page, you see that we have 3 buckets set up. Okay, eventually, all of our documents are going to be placed in one of these 3 buckets. And for the purposes of this DBQ, again, our question is, why did the Industrial Revolution begin in England? We're going to focus on 3 major topics. Okay, if you think back, we talked about how all industrialized countries have 3 factors of production that allow them to industrialize. And if you remember, those 3 categories were land, labor, and capital.
Remember, LLC.
Yes.
Land, labor, capital.
Got it. Okay, so you label your buckets land, labor, and capital. We're going to argue that England was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution because it had all 3 of these things, and all 3 of these things were better than other countries at the time. All right, so if we look at our documents, the titles can kind of give it away, but we also might have to look back at the documents themselves to figure out where they go. Okay, now remember, land, when we talked about that, land was natural resources, okay, and things that allowed England to industrialize in terms of raw materials. So if we look at our documents, document 1 was a map that showed raw materials. Document 2 was an excerpt that talked about how England was fortunate having these things. So documents 1 and 2 are going to go in our land category because they both discuss this idea of having natural resources. Okay? Documents 3 and 4 both talked about how efficient England was in terms of labor. Okay? This document 3, if you remember, document 3 talked about how England had a lot of factory workers because they came from other industries for higher wages. That one talks about labor, so we're going to put it in our labor bucket. Document 4 discusses how the assembly line made labor more efficient. Again, relates to the idea of workers and how they're able to do that efficiently. That will also go under our labor category. Okay, if you look at document 5 as well, document 5 also discusses concepts of labor. And if you look back at it, it talks about how England had a division of labor, okay, and how the inventions were possible because of that division of labor. So document number 5 will also go there. Okay, if you look at documents 6 and 7, they're very similar categories, they're very similar documents. Both of them are charts that show all of the different technologies and inventions that Englishmen created during this time period. And if you remember, capital is the idea that you have money, you have machinery, and you have tools. And if you look at those charts, all of those things talk about different inventions or tools that they used. So it's going to make sense for us to put documents 6 and 7 in our capital category. Okay? Now if we look at document 8, document 8 discusses new methods of agriculture, different ways of using land. Okay? Now, for our purposes, again, we're talking about the land and the advantages that England's land has. So document 8 is going to go under the land category. And if you look at document 9, it talks about how England did not have the same taxes as other countries in Europe. It also had more freedom politically and economically that allowed for them to do that. And anytime we're talking about money, remember we're talking about capital. So document number 9 is going to go under capital. So basically all we've done here is taken the 9 documents that we analyzed and put them in 3 categories that we can now use to organize our essay. So in our essay we're going to have a land paragraph, we're going to have a labor paragraph, and we're going to have a capital paragraph. And we can use these documents to support that.
Mr. Plaza, can you just write a money, a dollar sign right underneath capital?
Yes.
So whenever you think about capital, think about money, dollar bills.
Okay. So again, these are the 3 categories that we are going to use for our essay. All right? Now we're going to shift gears a little bit here and look at our DBQ outline. Okay? Each of you are going to get one of these. And really all an outline does is help you organize what it is that you're going to be putting down in written form later on. Okay? Your goal for the rest of class today is to work on completing this DBQ outline. Okay? And as Mr. D and I have discussed over the last couple of days, the more time you put into these initial steps, the easier it's going to be to sit down and write your essay. The whole purpose of this DBQ is to get everything organized so that you can just sit down and write it. Okay? So if we look at our DBQ outline, the first thing we see is a title section. Okay? Now, don't get hung up on the title. This could probably be the last thing that you do.
And most writers don't even come up with the title until they finish their paragraph or finish their essays or finish their books. The title's the last thing they think about because people spend way too much time thinking about it.
Right.
So might as well get your information down first and then come back to the title and see what you want to title your paper.
Right. Okay, now in any essay you have an introduction. And in a lot of English classes you've probably been told that you need some kind of hook or some kind of attention getter. In a history essay you do not need one of those. Okay, and a lot of times they don't make sense. I think one of the best ones we ever heard, it was a paper about slaves, and the person started off their paper by saying, "Have you ever been a slave before? Well, let me tell you what it's like to be a slave." Okay, things like that don't really make a whole lot of sense. So what we want you guys to do is simply jump right in to your background information. Okay? Now, this background information should come from your pre-reading that we did in this class. And if you look in your binder, that would be 7-1. Okay, this reading gives you all kinds of background information about the Industrial Revolution. It answers these questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. We also have some notes that we took in class, 7-2. Okay, so these 2 things are going to give you a lot of information to help you do this. Okay? Whenever you write an essay, you want to assume that the person that is reading your essay knows absolutely nothing about your topic. Okay? So we want to tell our reader what the Industrial Revolution was.
And to be as specific as possible, this is basically like you teaching somebody who's never heard of these terms before.
Right. This background information should be about 4 to 5 sentences at the most. Okay? And again, really all it does is tell the reader what it is you're talking about. Because if they start going through your why did it begin in England and things like that, then they're not going to make a whole lot of sense. Okay? So after you give your background information, you're going to jump right into your thesis. Now this should look familiar because this is the thesis statement that we created together as a class yesterday in class. Okay? And this is our overall claim. This should be the last sentence of your intro. Okay? So your introduction paragraph does 2 things. It gives background information and tells us your thesis statement. Okay, so that's paragraph 1. Each of your body paragraphs are going to be relating to a different bucket that we just discussed. Okay, so if we go back to our buckets, if we look at those, okay, we said that we're going to categorize our documents into land, labor, and capital, right? So our first paragraph is going to be our land paragraph, okay? And anytime we start a new paragraph with a new topic, we need a topic sentence. It's basically just a 1-sentence introduction to what your paragraph is going to be talking about. Okay? It should also relate back to your thesis. Okay? So an example topic sentence in this case, a very, very simple one, would be something along the lines of, the Industrial Revolution began in England because of its land. Okay, very simple. It goes back to our thesis statement, which talks about the Industrial Revolution beginning in England. It also tells us we're going to be talking about land. Okay, now if we look at our buckets, we said that we're going to use documents 1, 2, and 8 to prove that land helped the Industrial Revolution start in England. We are going to ask you guys to use at least 6 of the 9 documents in this. So if you notice that in this outline, each of these charts only has 2 spots for your documents. Now, of course, you can do more than 2, but we like to use at least 2 for each paragraph, giving you a total of 6. So let's say I decide to use documents 1, documents 2. Okay. Then I look at my labor category. And I said I'm going to use 3 and 4. And I look at my capital category. And I'm going to use, say, 6 and 7. Okay? Now the rest of this outline, if you look at these charts, at the chart here, it's basically laying this out in claim, proof, and reasoning. The good news is that you've already done the first 2 of these, the claim and the proof. If you look back in your document packet, so like document 1, okay, I already determined the main idea of the document, and I already picked out some evidence that supports that. So really all I need to do then is transfer this to here, main idea to main idea, and this to here, quote to quote. Okay? Now the reasoning part is when you take this information that you put here and tell us, how does this quote help answer the question, what does it prove? This is where your analysis comes in, and this is the part that this should take up the bulk of your paragraph. Okay? So according to document 1, this is the main idea. Here's my proof. Here's what it means. You do the same thing with document 2. Okay? At the bottom of each of these body paragraphs, you see there's a concluding statement or transition sentence. Just wrap up that paragraph, it's a paragraph symbol, in one sentence. Okay, so kind of getting it transitioning to the next thought. Okay, now each of these body paragraphs are organized in the same way. Okay, so all I'm doing is taking the main idea, the proof, and explaining it. Same thing with this one. Main idea, proof, explaining it. Okay, and again, the more effort I put in to these sections here, the easier it is when I sit down and write.
The more you put into reasoning in that section, because we've already done most of this work already in the prior class, is the reasoning. We want to see how well you can explain what the quotes mean and why that proves your claim.
Right.
Okay? And how the reasoning correlates with everything else in what you're trying to say in your whole essay. So make sure you spend a lot of time on the reasoning portion.
Okay. The final part of your outline is your conclusion. And the conclusion in our mind takes up 3 things. You restate your thesis. So that same thesis statement that we put here, we want to say it in a different way. Okay? We want to still include our 3 buckets and refer back to the question.
Put that in parentheses so that they know it's not part of the sentence.
Okay, then you need to summarize your argument in a few sentences. So address each of the categories again. So like if I said land, summarize what you said. Labor, you do the same thing. Capital, same thing. Okay, it's really just a couple sentence summary of everything that you proved, and then leave us with a final thought in your concluding statement. then you're done.
Yay! Now, up here, please make sure this is not the sentence. This is just what needs to be included
Yes.
in the conclusion.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
do not actually write this. Okay? It's just telling you what you should include in there.
Yes.
Okay? Thank you, Mr. D, for clarifying that. All right. So again, this has just been kind of an overview of how to do this process. Use this information to now complete your own outline. If you're staying on schedule, your outline will be due tomorrow, which is Thursday. You should come in with this outline ready to go, and that way you can just sit down over the next couple days, type it out, and you'll be done and ready to go with your DBQ.
And please remember, always reread your work. When you write a sentence, reread it, make sure it makes sense. When you transition to the next sentence, reread that, make sure that makes sense, and that flows with the sentence prior. Okay? Writing it's not an easy task, but if you take the time to actually put effort into revising your work, your essay will be 10 times better.
Well said. Okay. Both of us will be back tomorrow to help you guys out with this, but again, please come in with most, if not all, of this outline ready to go so that you can use these 2 days effectively to write. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, guys.